was the margin that actually was difficult for you, or maybe swayed it the other way?
I don't think people put enough credit on the boxing ability, for me. Doing 10 rounds, doing 12 rounds, I'm well conditioned, and I can box. I haven't always got to knock out my opponents. Well, evidently I have, but I mean, I can do 12 rounds, in a weight class. There's 2 weight classes above my weight. The difference in it today, I believe, was just inactivity. There's a lot of emotions going on for me. It's a lot to take in after the past 2.5 years, and I wondered how much it had taken away from me. And I'm glad to see that it's not taking anything away from me.
He performed well. That's what it was about. He kind of performed to his best of his ability. Was winging a lot of the shots. I'm not knocking my son because I love my son. I've always got his back. But we all have defeats, and he'll come back from this. And I'm glad that he's he's lost lost the fight. Now he can go back to the drawing board and know where he went wrong. Take his time, and he'll come back. Because I know he's got a heart to be a winner. And that's all he wants to do. And to be at the ring for 14 months and in fight. Well, I was actually really impressed with Chris Eubank Jr. He done really well. He stood his ground. He done 12 hard rounds. But Conor come back. He'll be a better fighter. We've got a lot to go back. Well, not a lot to go back. Just to be able to take his time. First time at 160. Yeah, I think he done really well. So I'm proud of him, mate. Win, lose or draw, I'm proud of my son. Just that we thought we were going to even the score, but, here go back and try again, just like I did.
Live on DAZN Worldwide, April 26th, Eubank Jr versus Benn. Buy now at DAZN.com/boxing.
I think it's fair to say we witnessed one of the greatest fights in British boxing history tonight. Both men just showed the most incredible heart, desire. But the man to my right, for me, I've just witnessed one of the great performances from a British fighter. 147-pound fighter, whether you like it or not, moved up and just never stopped trying to win the fight. I thought the fight could have gone either way. I know a lot of people thought he won, Eubank won, whatever. But I want to talk about the performance, the heart, the mentality, and the never say die spirit from Conor Benn tonight, because I can't believe what I witnessed. There's going to the well and there's going to the well and just never ever giving in, but never stop trying to win the fight. Not trying to survive, trying to win the fight. And obviously there's a lot of people in this room, we know what he's been through. Opinions are opinions, and for me tonight, Conor Benn become the people's champion, because this kid is a great kid, and he's always been a great kid. But tonight, he showed you it in the flesh. 14 months out of the ring, never experienced that kind of occasion before. 65,000 people, and he stood in the ring and he had it. He took the kitchen sink off Eubank, and he kept on trying to win the fight. So
you don't want nothing more as a boxing fan. That was fantastic. Enjoyed every second of it. Good fight. Happy.
What did you think of Eubank's performance? Do you think he won the fight?
Yeah, I think he won the fight. It's a good fight though. Really close, really close. Everything was. I think it's a good fight.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think Eubank should do, or do you think they should run it back, Fraser?
Of course, it's a business. They can run it back, man.
What's your plans going forward, Fraser? Just before we end this stuff.
Speak to promoters, man. Speak to Ben.
All right, thank you. Congratulations, senior.
Congratulations, Chris.
Congratulations, Chris. How are you feeling at the moment?
Just shush, man.
Guys, this style of views. Guys, move that back.
I feel pretty good. I mean, I thought he fought again. I'm the type of guy. I pay homage to both fighters. I thought they both put their hearts on the line.
Yeah.
I thought they both gave everything they had. And if they could have gave more to the crowd, they would have gave more.
Yeah.
I think the biggest win.
From the moment this fight was announced, it was more than just another boxing match. Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn wasn't about titles or rankings. It was about bloodlines, pride, and legacy. It was history echoing with a modern twist.
I think it's going to be a very good fight. Conor has punching power chances. Chris is the bigger guy, so you give Chris the advantage going in because he's the bigger guy. But Conor does have exceptional punching power, so it's going to be a great fight. I think Chris should win the fight. I think Chris should outbox him, outsmart him, but he will have to be smart early because Conor is a great puncher.
Eubank Ben.
Yeah. Well, it's bigger than it ever was. It's 3 times bigger than it was before the 2 positive clomiphene tests. Ben's dangerous early in that fight, in my view, because he's coming with all that stinging venom and kind of pent-up aggression that he's developed over the last 2.5 years. But I think Eubank's fought the better level of opponents, even though he's aged 2.5 years and he's been knocked out by Liam Smith. I go Eubank on points. What do you go?
I go Ben.
Early?
Early.
Yeah, you may be right.
I just think from the history, I'd love to see the Ben family.
Eubank has that Conor doesn't in this fight is size and probably strength. What he doesn't have, in my opinion, is the boxing ability, the speed, the movement of Conor Benn. Don't get me wrong, if this fight was at the same weight class, Conor Benn's a big favourite. But Conor Benn's coming up 2 weight classes, and that's what makes this fight a 50-50. Eubank has the size, but Conor has the speed, the sharpness, and
starting with Vidal Riley's take on the showdown.
The build-up between the two of them, between the fight, some of it, a lot of people's opinions been a little bit over the top. And how do you see it going, mate?
The build-up's been everything that you need it to be. You want to see the drama, you want to see the friction, you want to see hate. Basically, what fuels this fight is the hate. The fathers had that for each other, and for the sons to have their own storyline that creates the same vibe of hate. That's all we could ask for. So no, the build-up's been good. And in terms of how the fight goes, I've sat on the fence majority of the time. I slightly edge it in Chris's favour, just based on previous opponents. It's not even the size thing really. It's just who he's been in there with, and experience is it's one of this priceless. So I kind of go 55-45, Chris. But yeah, we'll see, because the fire that Conor has in his heart, the motivation to that is also priceless. So they're both working with fuels that are, you can't buy, pretend, or
a new chapter in a saga that began decades ago with their legendary fathers, Chris Eubank Sr. and Nigel Benn. In the lead-up to the clash, the boxing world buzzed with anticipation, not just because of the fighters' names, but because of the tension that simmered beneath the surface. This wasn't a manufactured grudge or a flashy marketing gimmick. This was real. One of the first to highlight that intensity was former fighter and pundit Vidal Riley. For Vidal, this matchup was charged with more than just physical stakes. It carried emotional weight, personal vendettas, and the kind of history you can't fake. He described the animosity between the fighters as authentic and deep-rooted, a reflection of their father's fierce rivalry in the 90s. That connection made this fight compelling.
I personally think he's a bit of an idiot, but, I don't know if I speak on behalf of the nation or, he has a couple of people that like him. I just think he is what he is. You need personalities in the sport of boxing. He's definitely a personality. You need it. You need people like him in the game. Don't mean I have to like him.
Do you think that once it's all done and dusted, there will be a time where you'll think of each other fondly, you'll have that relationship, or is it too much hatred?
I actually changed my mind. I don't hate him. I just think he's an idiot.
We can't stand each other. It's dark now. It's nasty. It's personal.
Well, yeah, you're certainly the most experienced opponent of Conor Benn's career. Do you think your skills are going to be too much? Your jab, your power?
Again, it's this isn't any one attribute. I'm a complete fighter. I've been doing this for so long now. I've forgotten more things than he knows, and that will show on the night. The experience, the dedication, and the will. These will be the deciding factors.
It's been a really heated promotion. You're already fined by the British Boxing Board of Control. Can we expect to see any more shenanigans from you?
In a way few modern bouts are. Vidal believed this grudge match was driven by legacy and personal pride, elements that elevate a sporting contest into a cultural event. When breaking down the fight, Vidal admitted it was a tough one to call. Both men had been sharp in the media, each carrying a chip on their shoulder and something to prove. But when pressed, Vidal leaned ever so slightly toward Eubank Jr. His reasoning wasn't about size or power, it was about experience. Eubank Jr. had been in deep waters before, fought elite opponents, and endured high-pressure moments. That mental toughness, forged in the fire of past battles, gave him an edge. Still, Vidal didn't count Conor Benn out. Far from it. If Chris had experience, Benn brought hunger. Vidal emphasized that Conor's drive wasn't just about aggression, it had direction. There was a purpose to his fire, a desire to step out of his father's shadow and carve his own name into the sport.
I think weight classes do matter. I've always said I think young Ben is going to be super strong. He's coming up and he will be bull strong. To go with the aggression as well is a dangerous concoction. But if it was all about sheer power and strength, it's only part of it. There's other things involved in world level boxing. So Eubank's experienced. I think he's going to step back. He's going to try and catch him on the way in, try and cover him up, tie him up. I just think and try and get Ben into middle rounds. Where Ben's obviously going to be pushing it. He's got to push it because he can't stand off Eubank. He's got to bring it. But bringing it and not having success, where it's hard, you're having a hard 5 or 6 rounds, and the guy's fending you off, and he's doing all of these things, and he's a naturally bigger man, can take his toll. Can Eubanks take the ferocity of Conor Benn? We don't know. Can Conor Benn do a 12-round fight being countered every so often coming in? Is that going to have its toll? That's why it's a genuine 50-50 matchup.
In the end, Vidal called it a 55-45 edge in favor of Eubank Jr. Barely a prediction, more an acknowledgement of how close the fight truly was. Following Vidal's emotionally charged perspective, the discussion shifted to a more tactical tone with Peter Fury. Known for guiding top-tier fighters, Peter's analysis dug into the technical details that could determine the outcome. He emphasized that weight classes exist for a reason. In his eyes, Conor Benn stepping up in weight wasn't just a challenge, it was a genuine risk. Fury acknowledged Benn's power and aggression, but reminded fans that raw strength is only one part of a much more intricate equation.
Chris, how are you feeling ahead of a big fight on Saturday night?
I'm calm, I'm relaxed, I'm happy, I'm fresh. Everything is on track.
For yourself, this is a standard procedure. You've been in big fights. This is Conor's big step up. For yourself as well, you say skills and power, etc., is a big advantage. How much is experience and experience of this big occasion a power for you, an advantage for yourself as well?
I think that is maybe the deciding factor of all this. We both have speed, we both have power, we both are hungry to win. We both did not have the experience that I have. He hasn't got it. He hasn't earned it. He doesn't have experience against, the type of fighter that I am on a stage like we are going to be fighting. I fought in big arenas many times before in my career. He hasn't. Yeah. I think experience.
He believed Eubank Jr.'s ring IQ, timing, and ability to control tempo would be critical assets. Peter predicted Chris would use smart movement, stepping back, tying Ben up, and picking his counters to navigate the early onslaught. According to him, the middle rounds would be key. He expected Ben to start fast, trying to overwhelm Eubank, but warned that failing to land early success could lead to frustration and fatigue. While he recognized Benn's potential to cause damage, Fury ultimately saw the bout as a dead-even contest. To him, it wasn't hype. It was genuinely a 50-50 fight.
Where do you position him, Steve?
I think that Conor is still improving.
Yeah.
I wish he had more time, a couple of years earlier, started boxing earlier, would be at a higher level. I think Eubank is probably a little below his peak, but still at a top level. I think Conor's still improving. But they can't wait around for another couple of years for this fight to happen because the age, Eubank Jr. is getting older. So I think if Conor wins this, I think he's going to go on to improve even more, become a better fighter. I think it's early in his career. He's getting this fight.
He's sort of in a win-win position, though, Conor, isn't he? Because if he loses this,
he's
at 160, he's a
147
fighter. And if he wins, he takes himself up to another stratosphere.
Yeah.
So I think it's a win-win. Whereas with
Both men had a realistic path to victory, and just as importantly, both had lingering questions they needed to answer under the bright lights. The final voice in the pre-fight conversation came from former world champion Steve Collins. While Vidal focused on fire and legacy and Peter on strategy, Collins brought a career-level perspective to the table. He examined where both fighters stood in their journeys and how this fight might reshape their futures. Steve was candid in saying that Conor Benn was still a work in progress, but that wasn't a knock. It was a recognition.
I'm looking forward to this fight. It's actually a good match.
Yes.
And you haven't got many good boxing matches coming up. You've got great fighters fighting guys who we know they're going to win or beat. I don't know who's going to win this. I genuinely cannot pick a winner. I can, pick reasons why I think either guy can win. And so I'm looking forward to it because it's
of growth. He noted that Benn had improved significantly in recent bouts, and if he had turned professional just a couple of years earlier, he might already be world-class. Yet in boxing, timing is everything. The stars had aligned now, not later, and the fight had to happen when it did. Chris Eubank Jr., on the other hand, was no longer the up-and-comer. He was the seasoned contender, with time no longer on his side. For him, this bout wasn't just about legacy, it was about relevance. A win would reaffirm his place among boxing's elite. A loss could dim that light permanently. Together, the insights from Riley, Fury, and Collins painted a rich, complex picture of a fight.
Can't wait. I mean, look, Eubank's playing a blinder for the promotion of the fight. I mean, a little bit annoying. I mean, unfortunately, if I could fight, I'd want to give him a slap myself, but that's not going to happen. So, Conor's fired up. I mean, honestly, I've never seen someone put themselves through what he is putting himself through in training camp. He's going to be like a caged animal when that bell goes on April 26th. A big disadvantage in size, but he makes up for it in attribute, hunger, youth, tenacity, volatility, and he is in camp with his dad, grafting and dreaming every day of violating Chris Eubank Jr. on April 26th and doing it in spectacular fashion. And I can't wait. Couldn't have gone any better in terms of the sparring that they've had, and the preparation that they've had. Honestly, if I could have just put Conor Benn in a fight in the best physical condition, mental condition, we've got it. So there's no excuse. We can get beat on Saturday, that can happen. But the absolute best version of Conor Benn will be there on Saturday.
That was about far more than fists. It was about lineage, identity, and rewriting narratives. When Eubank Jr. and Benn stepped into the ring, they weren't just fighting each other. They were fighting history, expectation, and everything their names carried with them. Steve felt Eubank Jr. might be slightly past his peak, but still performing at a high enough level to make the matchup intriguing. It was the classic dynamic, a seasoned veteran who knows every trick in the book versus a younger fighter on the rise, full of energy and ambition. What really stood out in Steve's take was his view that this was a win-win for Conor Benn. If Conor lost, it would be seen as a valuable lesson, one taken against a naturally bigger, more experienced opponent. But if he won, it would be massive, a leap into stardom, possibly overnight. For Eubank Jr., the stakes were very different. He didn't have the same margin for error. A loss wouldn't just be a blemish on his record, it could signal the end of the road for him at the top level. So while fans and analysts were discussing weight classes, tactics, and styles, Steve was focused on bigger themes, timing, pressure, and what the outcome could mean in the long term for both fighters. Then came Eddie Hearn with his signature promoter flair. He was clearly feeding off the drama in the build-up. According to Eddie, Eubank Jr. wasn't just preparing for a
You do not support the Junior Benn fight, even at 160, Chris?
Then you're asking the fighter to actually destroy his career. You're asking Conor to destroy his career, because once he moves up with that weight, once you put that weight on, you can't come back down. So then you are a small middleweight. You know, this is how promoters destroy fighters and pay no attention to how much damage they're doing to that
fight. He was putting on a promotional masterclass, stirring the pot at every opportunity. Eddie even joked that if he could box, he'd have been tempted to give Eubank a slap himself. That's how much he was winding people up. So in the end, this fight wasn't just about two men stepping into the ring. It became a collision of generations, philosophies, and intentions. One fighter had everything to gain, the other had everything to lose. The promoters leaned into drama. The father warned of danger. And somewhere in the middle stood a bout that had the boxing world watching, not just for the punches, but for the implications. To Chris Eubank Sr., the fight wasn't about...
Said this is a legacy fight.
It is being billed as a legacy fight?
Okay, sure. They have built it as a legacy fight. So this started in 1990 with me and Nigel. So let me ask you. So my son, he smashes an egg on the face of Conor. You want me to be associated with this is what you call legacy? That's not legacy.
It's legacy, isn't it, Chris?
That is bringing the game of boxing into disrepute. That of which would have been a disqualifying effect back in my day. No different to the language of Conor. The man speaks like he's a possessed drunk.
Your dad intervened with the egg throwing and put his arm, I think, on your throat. And at the second press conference, you basically threatened Nigel Benn. Said if he did that again, you deal with him. And
it wasn't a threat, it was a promise.
Oh, it's not a promise, is it?
You can't touch
scumbag.
You can't
What we did.
You can throw an egg in his face and his father can't.
No,
me and him are fighting.
You're just upset.
Me and you are fighting.
Your dad can't stand you and
I'm
my
not
dad has
upset.
my back. You are, that's all that
I'm not
was.
upset.
My dad put
Me and you are
his
fighting.
hands
Whatever
around you,
happens between us
My dad would put his arms around you. What are you going to do about it?
No one
What are you
else.
going to do about it? Tell me. What
No
you done
one
to his
else
hand
can
back?
touch
Tell
me.
me. Tell me.
If they do, there'll be
Tell me.
consequences.
Oh, consequences to what?
If
What's
anyone
that?
else,
Slap you right now.
if anyone else touches me,
what if I was to slap you right now? What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, go on, go ahead.
Yeah, talk about my dad.
I'm not talking about your dad.
No.
But I told him.
Yeah, but
I told him.
Get off me, please.
My old man would never touch you, so your old man's never going to touch me.
I would never slap you.
You would never slap me.
Yeah, no, I
you put your hands on me twice since my last fight.
When?
You pushed me.
Push, a little push.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. You put your
legacy. It was ego, dressed up in nostalgia. A blend of bravado and spectacle. What should have been a proud continuation of family tradition felt more like theater. He pointed to that now infamous moment during the promo run when Eubank Jr. cracked an egg on Conor Benn's face. For men...
Sad, you know, I mean, look, I think that it would be easy for us as the away corner, especially with all the abuse that Eubank's given me and the slander that we've received, for me to go in deep. But it's a personal thing, it's family for them. And, you know, it's sad to see. I hope that, look, even beyond this fight, there's more to life than just this fight. It doesn't look like they're going to get, you know, rekindled before the fight. Post-fight, I hope they can, you know, communicate and you know, get along. Life's too short. Eubank's got a lot to focus on next week, and you know he'll do it with his own. He's a big boy, and he'll be ready. And he's a tough kid. He'll give it everything. And it's a shame that anything happens like that, you know, between father and son. And I hope that they can, you know, manage to revive the relationship.
It was just pre-fight antics, but for Chris Sr., it was embarrassing, not clever, not promotional gold, just a moment that, in his day, might have gotten a fighter disqualified. The trash talk, the over-the-top energy, It all clashed with the old-school code he fought under. So when Chris Eubank Sr. spoke, it wasn't as a promoter, pundit, or even just a boxing legend. It was as a father, distancing himself from what he saw as a reckless decision. He wasn't backing this fight, not even at 160 pounds. And in a sport where every angle gets pushed for profit and hype, his was a rare voice urging caution. He wasn't warning the opponent. He was warning his own son. But underneath the hype, Eddie delivered a serious message.
Eubank beats him on points.
Eubank Ben. What do you think happens?
You know what, I'm a little bit torn at the minute, but I'll stick with what I've always said. I think Eubank beats him on points, but I won't be surprised if Conor wins. I think Eubank is firmly on the slide, and I know I get stick for saying that. I also think 160 is hurting him now. He's started to mention it a few times, so that's why I bring Conor into it a little bit more. But like I said before, that being said, if Conor flattens Chris, I won't be surprised. I won't be like, wow, Conor's just knocked Chris out. And if Chris was the same to Conor, I won't be surprised, because Conor's been down, many times before with journeyman, lesser punches than Chris, so I won't be surprised with the outcome.
Conor Benn was locked in. This wasn't a routine camp. This was full-on obsession. Conor had trained like a man possessed. No shortcuts, no excuses. From diet and recovery to sparring and mental preparation, it was all dialed in. Eddie called it the camp of dreams, and you could tell he meant it. He also didn't shy away from the reality of the size difference. Eubank Jr. was the naturally bigger man, but what Conor lacked in physicality, Eddie believed he made up for in hunger, energy, and a level of focus you simply can't fake. When that first bell rang, he said, Conor would be like a caged animal being let loose. That raw intensity, backed by elite-level preparation, made him dangerous. And Eddie was convinced that would show on fight night. Where others debated tactics, Eddie zoomed in on mindset and how Conor was all in.
I just think that there's size advantages with Chris. There's experience at fighting at a higher level with Chris, but there's also a lot more wear and tear on Chris. Chris is getting older. Making 160 is getting harder, but just getting older is a fact. Age catches up on us, and I thought in his last fight, I did think he looked old. So there are a lot of factors to this fight. There's Conor Benn's not much at the level. Not that Chris is an amazing level, but he's not had the same.
Then came a stark shift in the tone. Chris Eubank Sr. entered the conversation, and he brought no hype, just warnings. Surprisingly, his disapproval wasn't aimed at Conor. It was aimed squarely at his own son. Chris Sr., a former world champion and a legendary figure in British boxing, made it clear he didn't support.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Yeah, without a doubt. The pressure's on Eubank Jr. Like Johnny says, he's got, and plus the stage is at, what is it, 35, something like that. The stage is at, he's never got that world title that he's always wanted, always claimed for. So if he gets beat by a career welterweight,
the fight, not at 160 pounds, not under any terms. His reasoning came from both experience and concern, not just as a fighter, but as a father. That made his stance all the more powerful. The fight had been marketed heavily as the continuation of the historic Eubank versus Ben rivalry from the 90s. But Chris Sr. wasn't buying the legacy narrative. He saw it as manufactured drama, nostalgia repackaged for pay-per-view. In his eyes, this wasn't about legacy. It was theater, a marketing gimmick, and he wasn't afraid to say it. But after hearing Chris Sr. dismiss the fight as dangerous and even disrespectful, it was refreshing to get a more measured take. That came from Liam Smith. He didn't show up shouting predictions or trying to stir the pot. He was calm, clear, and honest, and that gave his perspective real weight. Liam admitted he was torn, but ultimately leaned toward Eubank Jr. winning on points. He didn't expect a dominant performance, but thought Eubank's experience, skill, and ring IQ would be just enough. Smith highlighted Eubank's ability to control tempo, frustrate opponents, and make adjustments mid-fight, tools that can be especially hard for a younger fighter like Ben to overcome. Still, Liam didn't rule out an upset. He made it clear that if Conor pulled off a win, he wouldn't be shocked. Benn's hunger, power, and pace could flip the script, especially if Eubank showed any signs of decline. That was the key element Liam raised. The fight's balance hinged on whether Eubank still had enough in the tank. And that's where Dave Coldwell added even more layers. Coldwell took the conversation further, breaking down the physical side of things. Sure, Eubank had the size, the name, and the big fight resume. He's faced top-tier opponents and banked countless rounds at the elite level. But as Coldwell pointed out, experience comes with wear and tear. Eubank's ongoing struggle to make 160 pounds had become harder to ignore. Age was catching up, and if you watched his last fight, it was clear. He wasn't quite as sharp. His body was slowing. The signs were there. The fight game is brutal that way. No matter your mindset, the body eventually stops cooperating. On the flip side, Coldwell brought attention to Conor Benn's youth, energy, and explosiveness. While Benn didn't have the same resume, he had something equally dangerous: speed, sharpness, and raw hunger. Coldwell reminded everyone that Eubank had been stopped before, and against a fired-up, razor-focused Conor, that vulnerability mattered. So, heading into the fight, the predictions were everywhere. Some analysts leaned on Eubank's experience. Others saw a younger, hungrier Benn pulling off the upset. It was a classic crossroads matchup: age versus youth, experience versus energy. Now that the fight's over, what do you think? Did your prediction hold up? Were you in the Eubank camp, trusting his ring smarts and composure? Or did you back Benn, hoping his fire and explosiveness would be enough? Whatever side you were on, drop your thoughts. Were you right? Or did the fight throw you a curveball?